But as life moved on, I've had so many friends that have been on his tours. And I actually read his book twice. It's at my cabin and it's still there. I'll probably read it again. So it's a real honor for me to be able to do this, to present this award tonight. And being from Fort Smith is a little bit extra special for me because that's my hometown. So I'm honored to be up here to do this. And in his own words, he paddled more miles on the Barren Lands than anybody else. Since 1971, he spent several months of his summer canoeing the northern rivers, some dozens of times, some of the rivers that were never paddled before. Born and raised in southern Ontario, he found his passion in the wilderness and canoeing at a young age. It was fitting then that he became the wildlife biologist and later took his knowledge to the people when he established Canoe Arctic, the first adventure travel business to operate in the Northwest Territories. Since 1980, he has been operating out of Fort Smith, sharing our unforgettable scenery and stories with hundreds of eager adventurers. He has done many other things to highlight this territory we are lucky to call home. And from writing award-winning books like Discovery Eden, Lifetime Paddling Arctic Rivers, to ranking high on the National Geographic destination list, needless to say, his work has been vital to our tourism landscape. And earlier this year, I'm told he begrudgingly decided to finally take a well-deserved break. Can everyone please stand up and join me in congratulating Mr. Alex Hall for decades of excellence and dedication to tourism.
About here. You can hear me all right? Well, thank you very much. I was very surprised to learn about this coming to me, and I'm certainly humbled by it. 48 years ago, I was a young wildlife biologist who got the chance to spend the summer on remote parts of Baffin Island. And quite unexpectedly, I was completely enthralled with the tundra wilderness. I had to see more. But I was a canoeist. I wanted to be able to really cover some ground. The answer was the Barren Lands, the mainland tundra, the largest wilderness left in North America, comprising 1/8 of Canada, where 40% of the surface was covered by water and where very few of its hundreds of rivers had ever been canoed. So in 1971, a friend and I drove from southern Ontario to Yellowknife and spent a good part of that summer canoeing across the Barren Lands to Baker Lake via the Thelon River. That was the start of a love affair that has lasted to this day. It took a few years, but by the fall of 1974, I was in business as the first professional canoeing guide in the Northwest Territories. And over the next 43 years, I made my living operating my one-man business called Canoe Arctic, incorporated out of Fort Smith. In the process, I introduced a couple of thousand people to the Barren Lands and northern parts of the boreal forest through my canoe trips. Well, back in the early and mid-1970s, the only other tourism businesses that I can remember were hunting and fishing camps and lodges, plus Bathurst Inlet Lodge, which was a naturalist lodge. So businesses like Bathurst Inlet Lodge and my business were something new in the tourism industry that was springing up around the world, and that industry became known as the adventure travel industry. Today, I guess it's referred to as ecotourism. In the Barren Lands, the two biggest attractions have always been wilderness as big and wild and remote as you can get, plus the wildlife that goes with it. The remoteness hasn't changed all that much, at least in the central Barren Lands, but the wildlife has. Back in the 1970s, 80s, and early 90s, animal sightings in the Barren Lands could rival those of the game parks of Africa. In fact, some caribou herds were larger than the wildebeest herds of the Serengeti. I've seen single herds of caribou numbering in the hundreds of thousands of animals that took over 24 hours to pass by us. Luckily, I kept a diary of all my years in the Barren Lands, and I kept track of every animal I saw. I've seen millions of caribou, thousands of musk oxen, over 100 grizzlies, and more than 1,000 of my favorite animals, the tundra wolf. Those great herds of caribou and the wolves that depend on them are largely gone now, but hopefully in another 20 years they'll be back again to some extent. As I look back on my life, I have to conclude that no one else has been more fortunate than I have. I spent 46 summers in what I regard as the most beautiful and exciting place left on this earth, in my pristine, wild Garden of Eden, the central Barren Lands. To my mind, I've had the best job in the world and the best place in the world, and I love just about every single minute of it. Thank you again.
Woo!
Congratulations once more to absolutely everybody who won awards. It was